Okay, hopefully we are live. Hopefully you can see me. Hopefully everything is working. Let's have a look. So, evening Jack, nice to see you, and evening James. I'm going to treat this as a weird live podcast as I cycle home. Sorry in advance for not saying much. That's fine, James. And I have a safe cycle. Hi, James in Uganda as well. Good that you could join. That's fantastic. So if anyone's not tuned in before, basically the whole idea of this is I'm streaming every minute of my season. I've been away for 5 days with my wife's family, which was okay. And I have not really touched my team for 10 days. So what I'm doing is I'm streaming every minute. So you're going to see my live tinkering, all my thinking out loud, and we'll see what I end up with. And the goal of this podcast / recording is to end up with a completed team that I'm locked in with unless anything comes out of the press conferences tomorrow. So that's where we are looking. Evening, Flapjack. Hope you're doing well, mate. So I'm going to try and ignore the chat actually for a minute, just so that I can focus in on my team. But then I'll join the chat again. I'll join the chat again in a minute, and I'm happy to answer any questions or go over anything. If you guys got any dilemmas or things or whatever, we can just chat about and hopefully have some fun. So this was where I was at last time I did my team. So we got Raya in goal, and then Trent, Cancelo, Robertson, Diaz at the back. A midfield of Kulusevski, Mount, Salah, Martinelli, Jesus and Tony. And then I've got Zinchenko, Andreas and Greenwood on the bench. Already on Ward because I was a trendsetter. But let's have a look at where I want to go because I've had a few ideas. I want to bring in Haaland, I think, who is a player who I've not been very high on, to be honest, for quite a lot of the time. So let's see. Let's see what we end up with. So I'm happy with the keepers. I'm not interested in the two Leicester keepers at 4 million because I just think Leicester are rubbish and I wouldn't have considered buying Kasper Schmeichel either at 4.5. I'm happy with Raya's points per game. Don't want to end up wasting a transfer on a keeper. Going to stick with those two. Happy with Robbo. Happy with Trent. Happy with Salah as my 3 Liverpool. So I'm sticking with that. And Diaz was sort of tempting me quite a lot, but I just think I definitely want Salah versus Fulham. Those two are solid, reliable picks. If Jota's back in a couple of weeks, then it just doesn't feel particularly worth it to risk or mess about with it. Cancelo, I'm happy with. Diaz is one I think I might lose. He's definitely a question mark. Zinchenko is also a slight question mark, but I'm not sure. I'll take him out for now. Kulusevski, I don't think I'm going to have, so he's gone. Happy with Andreas. Mount is another one I'm not going to go with, I don't think. I just don't fancy him out of that. And I'm fairly happy with Jesus and Tony. Greenwood, whatever. Actually, as James in Uganda is on the stream, he was asking me about Gabriel Jesus. I do think there's no argument to go without him. I feel like his ownership now, 74.6%. That is insane, isn't it? I'm not someone who particularly cares about ownership, to be honest, so it wouldn't put me off if I didn't think he was a good pick. However, I do think he's a good pick. His run of fixtures is brilliant, isn't it? And one of the things I'm going to talk about in a bit that I want to think about before I lock in my team is like, what does my team look like at the start of Game Week 2? What does my team look like at the start of Game Week 3? What does my team look like at the start of Game Week 4? Because one of the things I think often we get distracted by when we pick teams is we end up with a great Game Week 1 team, but then when it comes to 2, 3, 4, all of a sudden you sit in Game Week 3 with no Spurs players ahead of their brilliant run, and all of a sudden you feel like you need to wildcard or you need to rip things up to bring in Son or Kane. And that's something that I'm not particularly wanting to do. So in terms of going without Jesus, I think you can do it, but I would say I think if you're going to do it, it's because you think there's more value in someone like a Saka and there's another forward slot you want to fill. So say if, for instance, you really think like Tony's great value at 7 and you want Haaland and you don't want 3 attackers for your shape or whatever, I think that's when you might go without Jesus. But for me, I feel like there's enough there. Like I could go, for instance, Zinchenko, Martinelli and Saka, for instance. But I actually feel like, do you know what? I think Jesus is good value. I'm not going without him. He's locked in my team. So these players are all locked in for me, 100%. Now, let's have a look what we can do. So Haaland is a player that I quite like to squeeze in. And the reason that I'm quite keen on Haaland, obviously he's absolutely a beast. But while I haven't been on FPL, I have been looking at the fixtures, and I really felt like whatever Haaland does against West Ham, I feel like I'm going to want him for that Bournemouth home game. I just can't imagine a world where I don't want him. And obviously, if I haven't got that slot in my team, I'm going to be ripping it up to get him in. So I think I really want to go for Haaland. I don't really fancy him to get much against West Ham, to be honest. He might get a goal, but I don't think he's an outstanding pick. And I don't want to go with Kane because I want this Game Week 2 fixture here, even though Kane at home Southampton is also a go wild fixture. But basically, this Erling Haaland slot is a slot that could become Harry Kane in Game Week 3, although it's going to be hard to sell Haaland ahead of Newcastle, Palace and Nottingham Forest. But if I can roll a transfer into Game Week 3 and not make one in the first week, then I've got the potential to downgrade Salah if I so choose, although again his fixtures from Game Week 3 are monstrous, aren't they? So it might be tricky. Like, again, Bournemouth at home, don't really want to do that. But I could, for instance, go Salah to Diaz and upgrade Tony to Kane, that sort of thing, or I could go Salah to Son. You know, there's moves I can make to sort of try and make the most of the fixtures. But this slot here, the Haaland is Haaland, and then he can become Kane in Game Week 3 if I feel like I really want a Spurs attacker ahead of that run. Equally, Salah could become Son, or I could do what I just said of downgrading Salah to Diaz and going up from Tony. There's options, basically. I like options. I like flexibility. Flexibility suits me. So I've got 3 up top there. I like that. And I've got 2 starters and 3 there. Now, I did see Conte's quotes about Perisic earlier, saying that sort of he's not nailed to start and he needs to see. But again, looking ahead, he's a player that I definitely want. I've been high on him since the moment he signed. There's a great run there, 3-6, that I feel like I definitely want Perisic. I think he's just such an outstanding asset. I definitely want him. So I am going to be starting with Perisic, I've decided. The comments from Conte, I felt like he was, with Doherty, it was very clear that Doherty's not playing. But with Perisic, I felt like he gave enough hope there that actually there's I would say over 50% chance he starts. If he doesn't, he comes off the bench, get 1 point, whatever, that's fine. I'm all right with that. Feel like I'd only be booking in a transfer, and I don't particularly want to do that. I already feel like the idea of maybe bringing Son for Salah or Kane for Haaland if I want to in time is enough to put me off. Kane is 11.5, just double checking it's the same price. Obviously, price changes can scupper all of these plans, but I think it's nice to have an idea. Now, I think the 8 million mids are awesome, and I would like a slot for an 8 million mid. Like, I think Foden especially is going to be a really good pick this season, but that only leaves me with 6.5, so that's not a goer, is it? The other thing I could do is downgrade Tony. Let me come back to where I want to go. So I want to have a look at the cheap mids, because I think there's enough cheap mids. Like Leon Bailey is someone who is not in my team, and I think Leon Bailey looks a really good pick. What's his ownership? Only 14%. I'm going to add him to... Oh, he's on my watch list already. I'm just going to quickly run through the teams, actually, and just make sure there's no one that I'm forgetting. And I'll talk you through if I think there's any other good options. Obviously, Cash is a decent option at Villa. I already had Zinchenko in my draft. I'm not hugely keen on the Arsenal defenders. I heard someone... I've hardly listened to any content, but I was listening to Fantasy Football Hub's Sky podcast, and they were saying that Zinchenko wasn't hugely attacking against Sevilla. I'm not going to be going with Saka because I'm going with Jesus, and I've got Martinelli. But I think he's obviously a good pick. Jesus I've already got, so I don't see anything else there from Arsenal for me. I'm not going near Bournemouth. Brentford, I've got Raya, I've got Tony. I'm not going to pick a defender. I don't fancy them beyond Raya because of saves. In midfield, there's definitely some watch and sees there, like Lewis Potter and that. But again, I'm not going to be starting with 3 Brentford, I don't think. Having said that, if I go for another 4.5 midfielder, it would be De Silva, and then I'd be on the Brentford triple up to start the season, which would be controversial. Brighton. So Cucurella obviously is on the verge of a move to Chelsea. That sounds like it's going to happen. So he's going to be an option at some point this season. I'm going to add him to my watch list, but he's not an option now because we need to see what happens there. Let's see. I heard great reports about Van Hecker last season at Blackburn. Apparently he was brilliant for them, but he's not going to start the season. There's no one at Brighton I think is a good option at the moment. And Ciso could become a good option as a 5 million forward if he can get more minutes. I think he will see some minutes. At the moment, I'd definitely back him over Undaf, although Undaf again could become a great option potentially. Chelsea, although they're, we know about James and Chilwell and that, I feel like I don't want to start with them. I feel there's enough question marks over that. I do like Sterling at 10, but again, I'm not going to start with any of these guys, I don't think. So I'm happy to ignore Chelsea for now. I'm just trying to figure out especially these midfield slots, but I'm just running through everything. I'll just do this before the start of the season. Make sure that there's no one in any teams that I've overlooked or forgotten about, and then I can work off my watch list. I think Zaha's a decent option. Palace's fixtures are hard to begin with, but I do think he's a really good option. I'm not interested in their forwards. Everton, man, I'm tempted to not click on them. I do think Patterson's a good option at 4. If you're looking for a 4 million defender, I feel like it's sort of him or Nico Williams, isn't it, really? Not really interested in any of their mids. I did have Anthony Gordon in some of my early drafts, and I think for his price, I think he would be the one I'd go for out of all of them, although McNeil slightly puts me off of him because we're yet to see where Gordon's going to play. Fulham, I don't really know. I'm clicking on them. Almost certainly not going to start with a Fulham player. Got nothing really of interest there. Cabana, I was just having a quick look at to see what his price was with Harry Wilson injured, but Mitro could become good, but not for me. Leeds, again, there just doesn't seem to be much there. Rodrigo at 6 could become interesting, definitely, I think, but I'm not starting with him. Aronson at 5.5 could be interesting. Bamford could become interesting, but again, not to begin with for me. Leicester, they're a mess, aren't they? Obviously, Everson could be. I'll basically probably, what I'll do, just for transparency, if they give a nod to one or the other in the presser tomorrow, I'll just switch in quickly, whichever one of those is playing, and pick that as my second keeper. And it does open up the bench boost, interestingly, but again, I don't really foresee myself using that at the moment. Although I was talking about Gameweek 1 bench boost a while back. What I might do is switch up my team so that, say I'm playing my wild card in 6 or 8 or whenever it lands. I've decided with what I'm doing here with Haaland in my team, I've pretty much decided. I was thinking about playing a Gameweek 3 wild card and almost booking it in. I don't think that's a bad strategy at all, because it gives you that chance to see a couple of matches, see who could be those budget picks and what's going on, see which keepers are performing very early, then switch in Game Week 3 when those fixtures switch, like especially for Spurs. I could go without Perisic that way. I just don't want to do that. I want to give myself as long as possible before I wildcard, and give myself the flexibility. I can do it in 3, but I can do it later. So that's what I'm looking at with this team. And yeah, with the Leicester keepers, I'll just try and pick whoever I think starting. But it does open up the bench boost. And what I was just saying was, what I might think about doing is, say if I decide, right, I can see this wild card's coming down the way, and like say it looks like I'm going to play it in Game Week 9, I think that's a popular one, maybe around the international break. It might be that I decide in Game Week 6 that I'll use a transfer on upgrading somewhere. But actually with the setup that I'm going to have, most likely with 3 up top, I actually would have the potential to play anytime, which is quite exciting. In fact, I wonder if there's any good keeper rotations. I haven't looked at that. I'll come back to that after I've gone through all the clubs. I don't think there's any interesting Leicester defenders for me. Obviously, if Fofana goes to Chelsea, that would be great. I heard some people saying the 60 million is expensive. I think it's a bargain. He's such a good defender. And yeah, I'd happily pay 60 million for Fofana. I feel like he's going to be amazing. I feel like 70, 80 million should be more than his market value. Dewsbury Hall did well in that friendly, didn't he? Maddison, I think, is a good option at 8, but I don't see myself having an 8 million slot probably. Unfortunately, that could be the big downfall of what I'm setting up here, to be honest, because I think there's inevitably going to be some awesome 8 million mids, and that is a price slot I would like. Not huge on team structure as a thing in general, though. So, I mean, there's an argument to make for Matip if Konate's injured for a long time, but I would rather just pay the bit extra and go for Robbo. I've got my 3 Liverpool slots. There's loads of good options at Liverpool, obviously, don't need to tell you that. Man City, I was keen on having 3, which was looking at Diaz and Cancelo. Could still end up with that possibly. I don't think Ake is nailed enough to start with him. And Foden would be the one out of the midfield I'd be tempted with. If Mahrez had played better in the Charity Shield, I think I'd be more tempted, but I do think he's going to, there was so much better with Foden and Alvarez on the pitch. Yeah. Now, Man United, that is one that I'm looking at, unbelievably. Not interested in any of the defenders, but I am interested in this guy. which again I haven't been particularly up for Rashford. But when you look at his numbers there, so obviously last season was terrible, but that's an aberration because 3 seasons before that, 11 goals, 11 assists, 17 goals, 8 assists, 10 goals, 7 assists. That's elite sort of. I mean, that's not a great number there, but those are elite returns. So you've got 17 returns, 25 returns, 22 returns. That's quality for a midfielder. He was probably a forward in this season, I imagine, as well. So I think in fact, I'm sure he was, but he's a brilliant midfield option because of the injury to Martial. I'm assuming Ronaldo's not going to come into the team, and even if Ronaldo does come into the team, you'd assume that Rashford and Sancho are set to start anyway. So I really like Rashford, and he's definitely a name in my mind. Now, Newcastle, I noticed that in the chat, James in Uganda has said about Trippier. I think Trippier is a great option. He's already on my watch list. I don't see myself starting with a Newcastle option. They've got a really nice first 4 games, and then obviously 3 and 5 are tricky, and they've got a good run after. So I think he's a really valid, good pick, and I do think, like, realistically, I could see 3 out of 4 clean sheets to begin with. So maybe I should be taking Trippier a bit more seriously. He's definitely the standout option out of all the defenders. He is under consideration. I think he's a great pick if anyone goes for him, and I wouldn't write him off on the basis of 2 tricky fixtures if you've got cover, and I'm going to have cover in this squad. I like having a 12th player, and I think Andreas might well end up being my sort of second sub, so he's perfectly good to start as well. I don't really fancy them mids. I never fancied them from the off. Almiron at 5, again, he could be interesting, but I feel like Bailey at 5 is a better option to begin with because Almiron has sort of threatened in the past a little bit. I'm sure they're going to bring in other attacking options. I personally wouldn't go there despite pre-season. Like, I would never have considered him at the end of last season, and I think that's a good sign to not consider him at the start of the next, no matter what the price really. If he was 4.5, obviously, then maybe. But Bruno Guimaraes I've never been really up for. He's brilliant in Sky, but I don't really fancy him for FPL. And with Shelvey out, I don't think he's a great option. Wilson is on my shortlist, I think. Yeah, so he is definitely a player. I think he's well underrated, Wilson. So he's definitely one who, again, is under consideration for me. I think from Forest, it'll basically be Nico Williams or no one. I look through that list and I just think, originally I thought about Awani, but his performances apparently haven't been great. So Johnson as well, maybe, but not for me. I want to see how Nottingham Forest get on before I commit. We don't know who Southampton's keeper is, not an option. Defender's not an option. I mean, as sad as it makes me, there's just no options here, are there? Lavia could be I expect him to start regularly at 4.5. Aribo could become good. Not going to start with him. We all know who's good from Spurs. Don't need to say too much there. But for my team, I feel like Perisic is the one that I would look at for the defence, and he's the only one I'm looking at from defence. I think Kulusevski is good as a choice, but I just think there's too many other options at that price. I won't go there. Obviously, Son or Kane, can't really go wrong with those picks, but they're both. I'm going to stick them. I think to begin with, I was saying there's no way I'd start with Kane. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like I've seen enough from him in pre-season that actually he looks much sharper than he has done in previous seasons. So I am going to stick him on my watch list. And West Ham. So not interested in defenders. Such a shame for them that Aguerd is out for a bit. Bowen, I think, is a great option. Pretty sure he's on my watch list. And this is what I was saying about check your team, see what it looks like for game week, not just for game 1. What does it look like for game week 2, game week 3, game week 4? Suddenly, when you've got him sitting in your team in game week 2 for a run of Forest away, Brighton home, Villa away, I mean, it's not incredible, but it's good, and you'll feel very happy with him in your team from game week 2. I think he's a very reasonable price at 8.5, especially if you can keep him up. I want to see what happens with the forwards, Scamacca and Antonio. Will be interesting to see what they do there. I wonder if there's any chance they play Antonio out wide, actually, thinking about it. He could go into a wide position to give Scamacca more minutes. I mean, imagine that as a front three. Scamacca, Antonio and Bowen would be pretty tasty. Cause a lot of problems pulling onto fullbacks and roughing them up. Wolves, not really. Neto is the only one I think I'd think about out of this bunch. And he's not even on my watch list. I hadn't been keen on Neto, but I listened to Bradley Parker, who you should follow on Twitter. He's a Wolves fan, talking on Planet FPL, and he's pretty sober on his takes on Wolves, and he was very much saying like Neto looks back to his best, which is encouraging at the price. So that's where I'm at basically with all of that. We are. So I've set my watch list up. Like I say, I've sort of looking at this. I feel like I'm going to take Tony out because I'm not totally set on Tony. I think I've got 4 gaps in my team. I've got 4 players who I consider to be solid starters. Perisic is going to come off the bench. I know it's a bit of a gamble. I think he's worth it personally. So I've got 4 players who I'm going to start every game. These 2 I'm going to start every game, Martinelli and Salah. And these 2 I'm happy to start every game. So I've basically got 4 spots left. I need 2 starters and I'd like a strong first sub if possible out of this bunch as well. So when I look through this list, I guess the question for me is like, who do I think is going to score the most points? It's annoying the way the watch list formats because Tierney I don't want. He's gone. Chilwell also now with Cucurella probably coming in. No, actually no, I'd consider him in time. So these guys are in my team already. James saying Bamford or Wilson. Perhaps Bamford. I think both of those are on my watch list actually. Wilson definitely is. And there's Bamford as well. I think they're both good picks. Marsh seemed to suggest Bamford's not 100% still, and I think I do want to see how he gets on. He came back last season. He got injured. He won't be in my team in game week 1. Neither will Vardy. If I get another striker, it would be Tony or Wilson. I think I would maybe just slightly give the edge to Tony. I like his fixture run. I think they're all good play. Like Leicester defence looks messy. Man United, who knows what we're going to get, and then he's got Fulham, Everton, and then he's got Leeds and 6. I mean, I think that's a really good opening run of fixtures for Tony. I'm pretty confident he'll be in my team. Again, I think he's an underrated pick, boring pick, but underrated. I know that overall points tally is not incredible, but again, that change to 3 at the top. Oh, you can't see his old history, can you? They changed to 3 at the top, but that really transformed him as an asset. So what I'm going to do, let's have a look. If I go for my cheapest, let's do sort by price. So I'm not going. Fornals has lost my interest. Sorry, Pablo. So if I go for Bailey, I'm pretty sure I'll be with Bailey. Let's just check there's no one else in midfield that I'm missing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove all of the keepers from my watch list just so I can fit them all on one screen. I know which keepers I'm picking from, and I've already decided who I'm having. So, and that way I can see everyone on one screen. You can see who I was considering there: Edison, Mendy, Raya, Ramsdale, and Pope. I think those are the best keepers personally. Now I can fit everyone on one screen, I think. Yes. FPL Bailey. Surprised you're not back on the bench, but he's even more now so with the 4 million starting goalkeeper. The problem is we don't know who the 4 million starting goalkeeper is. If we knew for sure, I think you could definitely argue it. But again, I want Andres Pereira. I don't really want to play him against Liverpool. I think where I came to with the Game Week 1 bench boost thing was basically, I think that it's really good to have that bench boost and just being willing to play at any time. And I think for me, the psychology of that is the most important thing. So it's more important to be thinking, right, this isn't something I need to hold on to and plan around. It's like I can drop this whenever I want. And if there's a week where both my keepers have got a good fixture, Fulham have got a decent fixture, let's see what other players I end up with, then I'm happy to drop it whenever. And I think that feels like a good thing. So let's what I'm going to try and do is just fill in with the cheapest players I'm happy with, basically. So Bailey I don't consider reliable enough to be a starter, I should say. So I'm happy to start with him to begin with. That's again lovely couple of fixtures, Bournemouth and Everton up front. Doesn't get much better, I don't think. I think Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton are teams to target this season, I would suggest, early on. So I'm happy to have him in as a Game Week 1 starter, but he's not a player who, if he suddenly gets dropped or plays badly, which he could do, plays one bad game and his sub comes on and performs, I don't want him in my 11. So I want him as my 12th man. So I'm not really happy. I think that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I just think you don't want to have him as, if you have him as your 11th player, all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, I've got to play Bailey, who I don't think will start, or Andres Pereira in Game Week 2. Things can quickly go wrong, can't they? I mean, he's got decent fixtures, to be fair, so it wouldn't be the end of the world. But yeah, I'm not mad on it. I'll probably end up doing it now, but that's the whole point of this, is sharing my thinking out loud. So let's say if I went for, again, Trippier with those fixtures, I wouldn't be excited about playing him Game Week 3 or 5 against Man City or Liverpool. Could do it. but I'm not super excited about that. Let's see. What I'm going to do, in fact, is fill it in with 4.5 players, and then I can decide where I want to spend the extra money, and I can see what I've really got to play with. So if I went for more 4.5s, I'd go for Archer up front. I think he's the best. I would go for... where am I looking? I'd go for Josh De Silva. I mean, if there's any more news about good assets at these prices, then... if stuff's come out in the press conferences, let me know. I've not been particularly close to it this week. So I've got 3.5 million to play with to upgrade Williams, De Silva and Archer. So I could end up with an 8 million mid there instead of De Silva. I could end up with an 8 million player instead of Archer, and I could end up with a 7.5 million defender, or some sort of combination of that. But out of that bunch, I've got 4. I've got 2, because I don't consider Bailey, I consider him a bench option really. 4, 2, 2. So I need to upgrade those players to get 2 starters. And that really, to be honest, that rules out the 8 million mids if I'm going for Haaland, which I am, because I want that flexibility on Spurs assets. So that is going to be the big weakness of my team, I think, is I'm not going to have any of the 8 million mids, and I think there's so many good, very viable 8 million mids. But you can't have them all, and I'm all right to say that's not happening. And if I have to change things, I can change things. But ultimately, where do you find the cash in this team? Is by... I mean, I think all those 4 are going to have brilliant seasons. I don't want to find it there. You could find 0.5 out of Raya by going with the Leicesters. But again, are you really getting enough cash to upgrade somewhere else? I don't think so. I think Martinelli's great value as long as he's starting. I mean, the bank really in this team is, I think, in Salah, Jesus, Haaland. If one of those starts to struggle, or their teams are struggling, but it just seems so unlikely. So, yeah, maybe Haaland isn't a must-have. Maybe he's not. I think it's that thing of putting money into a premium asset versus spreading out across the team. I've been so strong on spreading money out across the team from the start, if you've watched the previous streams. But now, I watched Haaland's performance in the Charity Shield. I know people said they thought it was rubbish, but I thought he was, as a striker, he got in all the right positions. He created great opportunity, got into scoring chances. Should have done. On another day, he scores a couple of goals, no problems at all with that sort of those chances. So I'm not worried about that. If anything, it made me. In fact, it did make me more high on him as an option. This is where it's tricky, isn't it? Because like, if I go, let's see if I have Haaland. Let's see what I can get to. So, I think there's so much value in defence. I don't see myself starting with a 4. I've got Zinchenko. He's not on my watch list. Let's stick him on there. Can I still fit them all on one page? Yes. So it's between Diaz. I'm not going to start with Chilwell. So it's between Diaz, Zinchenko, or Trippier for that slot. Now, do like going for Man City. I mean, that run, I feel like I think I'm going to go for Ruben Diaz. I just think he's going to keep clean sheets. He's going to do great. But then I'm obviously going to have to lose Haaland if I go down that route. Unless I upgrade De Silva to a 6 million mid, which I can't quite get to Rashford. That's annoying. That would be tempting if I could have done that. FPL Bailey says, this is why I'm starting with Kane. It allows me to wait and see, but I'm wildcard game week 2. If I was wildcard game week 2, then I would definitely be starting with Kane, 100%. If I was wildcard game week 2, I'd have Kane, I'd have Son. I just think Spurs are going to do really well this weekend. And I'd be bench boosting as well, for sure. Josh Topley, is there any way I can see my team so you can rate it? I'm happy to do that in a bit, Josh. You can just chuck it in the chat, maybe just type in the names, but I'll do that in a bit. So yeah, Man City, basically that fixture run's brilliant. It's a shame I can't quite get to Rashford, but let's say if I go without Haaland. Now Foden is an interesting one, because I think Foden's, again, it's this thing of like, how do you weigh up the picks that are going to do brilliant, that you think are going to do brilliant for the season versus the short term. And I think often at the start of the season we get too fixated on the short term. It's like, is Foden starting game week 1? Well, it's like, actually, if he's with that fixture run, if he's going to start game week 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't care if he doesn't start game week 1, to be frank. And like on that basis, I'm very happy to put him in a draft. So, and then because he's going to get minutes, isn't he? I mean, he can score off the bench. He's a dangerous option. He looked brilliant in the Shield, I thought. So then you've got 5 at the back. I've got 3 strong starters there in midfield. I've got Bailey, who I'd be very happy to start, especially game week 1. And I'd probably rest a Man City player on the bench in game week 1. Rest. It sound like I'm Pep. But I'd probably stick Diaz on the bench game week 1 so that I don't have double Man City defence against West Ham. But then I've got 5. I've got 3 solid options, and then I need another. So I'd be looking at... I feel like Andreas and Bailey are really good options. So if I go... this is the only midfield slot I think is up for grabs, actually. Oh, it's my wife. 1 second, I'm going to get it. Let's see what she has to say. Hello. Oh yeah, I'll text it to you. Okay, bye. She wants to know what the password for my son's FPL team is because he is currently in the process of setting up his FPL team. So I'm just going to text it to her. I've taken a screenshot of it because I thought it might be a fun thing to share with you. So my son's 7 years old, and he's actually created a pretty solid FPL team without my help. So I'm very proud of him, and I'll show you. I run a league as well called Bigs and Smalls League, which is a league for parents and kids of school-age kids, which is really fun. And yeah, he goes a bit hit wild, but he's getting good at it. He's only 7, so that's fun. Let's see. So, sorry, let me just get my train of thought back. 5 at the back. I've got 3 happy starters in midfield plus Bailey. So I'm looking for one more player. Now 9.5 on a forward. There's nothing at that price range that I'm excited about. Vardy is an option, obviously. I don't love their early fixture run in game week 2 and 4. And this is where it starts to get suboptimal in a way, because it's like, well, yeah, it starts to feel suboptimal because then it's like, right, well, I can put in like a Tony or a Wilson. Like, let's say Wilson's at the higher price point. But then I've got 2 million in the bank. I'm very happy with my defenders. I could upgrade a premium to a premium goalkeeper. Not loving that. I could upgrade Bailey or Andres Pereira, but again, I rate those guys as picks, so I'm not mad about that. I'm just left starting the season with 2 million in the bank. That doesn't seem like a particularly sensible move. Let's have a look. James Uganda, I'm 32 and I'm still hit wild. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm boring and I don't take many hits, but I love that you take those hits, James. Nunes punt says Bailey. Nah, I'm not interested in Nunes, to be honest. That one Charity Shield game not going to put me off. Before the Charity Shield, he was like the worst player in the world. Now he's the best. I just prefer just to wait and see how he gets on. If he nails down that slot he's scoring every game, you can bring him in game week 3 or 4 or whatever. I just don't like the punt. Again, for someone who's been wildcard in game week 2, I think he's a good punt. But not for me, I don't think. James Martinelli to Saka. I mean, I could do that, but again, I just feel like Martinelli, he's a gift, I think, at that price. And if he's starting, great run of fixtures, might be on pens. He's got a good record in limited minutes. I think he's a really good player. And I think he'll start as long as he plays well. He'll do it. And then yeah, let's have a look. Foram Katrani says, can we go for Dele Alli for Neto? I mean, you can do that. I haven't got Neto, and I'm not going to get Dele Alli for sure. I don't want Dele Alli. I think there's no reason to get him when you've got other proven assets around that price. So I wouldn't go there. But I quite like Neto. But again, it's like I could go Andres to Neto, but then it feels like the balance of the team is wrong. And this is where I come back to this thing of like, well, if I'm saying I'm not really happy with... I think Foden's great, but actually if I say I'll go back to Haaland, who's not on my flipping watch list. Let's get to Haaland. So if again I say, right, let's use the cash on Haaland, I've then got 5 defenders I'm happy starting with. I've got Salah, Martinelli, as good options as a 2, and I've got 2 at the top there. And I've got Bailey, who I can start. I've then got 6 million to spend on a mid. Let's have a look. I could look at Neto, for instance. Let's have a look how that looks. I don't love Neto is the only thing, and I don't like having 3 players at that price. Let's try one other thing. So if I go from get rid of Diaz, this is getting crazy now. If I go for Foden, I could put a Nico Williams in that slot and have 4 at the back, 1, 2, 3 in midfield. That's not right either, is it? Because then I've got 4. Oh, hang on a second. Yeah, that ain't working either. I'd have to downgrade Haaland because I'd end up with 4 and then 3 and then 2. So I've not got my full starting 11 there. I'd have to have Bailey as my 11th player, which I don't like. So let's see what it looks like without Haaland. Let's go back to what I had before, which is Tony. Even though I was saying all that stuff about Spurs and how great I think Spurs are going to be and how much I'm going to want a Spurs player. Now, this is where I wouldn't necessarily want to go. Wow. If I do this, I'm basically. So, what I was going to say is it blocks me off from Haaland because I don't want to be taking a hit in game week 2 for Haaland against Bournemouth. I just think I make that choice now, right? When I set up my team, you make the choices and you go with it. Josh, I'm happy to answer your question a bit, mate. Very happy to do that in about 10 or 15 minutes when I've locked in my own team. So, let's have a look. This is where you see the process, right? When other people stream, they present their team slickly, but this is where the challenges are, I think, when it comes down to these final few slots. Let's say I go for Diaz in there, then that gives me 5 at the back. It gives me 1, 2, 3 solid midfielders, and it gives me 2 there. And I've got 2.5 million to upgrade somewhere. Now, that could get me to another 7 million mid. I mean, I've got the same problem. I just don't know what to do with all this money. I think that looks like a great team for Game Week 1, to be honest. If anyone's got any suggestions of what they think I should do from there, let me know, because I think that looks like a really good team. It's got some risky picks in it, for sure, but I've got Triple City. Let's have a look. So, if I go back to Haaland, what does that give me? 10.5. So 2, 1, 2, 5 at the back. And then I'll go for Cameron Archer up front. And that leaves me with 6 million in midfield. I was talking about Rashford before. I feel like Rashford, if I could get to him, that would have been cool. Brighton and Brentford, he could be up front for those games. But let's be honest, we don't know how they're going to get on. Raya to Mendy, maybe? Yeah, I could do that. I could upgrade the keeper to a 5 million keeper. I don't hate that. I mean, that's a nice run of fixtures, though, isn't it? And he gets those save points, Raya. I could go for an Arsenal keeper. I think their run of fixtures is really good early. I mean, Ramsdale looked diabolical at the end of last season, but you would think that in that run, certainly game week 3 and 4, I think he's in with a great shot of a clean sheet, but I don't think they look fantastic outside of that. Nick Pope was another I was considering. I do like that back line. It's what I started this stream with, I think. And I do like 1, 2. Basically, this will be 5 at the back. It will be 2 here in midfield, Salah and Martinelli, who are nailed, 100% nailed. And then 2 up front who are 100% nailed. So I've got like a 5-2-2. And then I've got Andreas, Neto and Bailey to share the 11th slot. And then they can also be the 12th and 13th when they've not got the fixtures. Let's have a look. Another thing I always do when I make transfers, I don't know if other people do this, is I just want to just do a quick gut check of whether I think it overall looks stronger when I look at these players on the left and the right. So when I look at, Zinchenko, Mount, Kulusevski, 2 8 million mids, whatever. So let's say the ones I like, so like Foden and Maddison. Zinchenko, Foden, Maddison, Tony, Greenwood. And Greenwood Archer we can rule out, that's the same player. Zinchenko, Foden. Zinchenko, Mount, Foden, Tony. Perisic, Bailey, Neto, Haaland. I actually think it's a pretty close call between those two. And this is where, I think this is a good gut check. But I did want Perisic, and that is something that makes a difference there. Is that the same value? So we've got... I'm just going to do some quick maths on my phone. Sorry if this is painful to watch, but this is how this is going to be because I'm working out my team live. So that left-hand list is worth 28 million, and my right-hand list is worth let's have a look, 27.5. So I can go Zinchenko to Perisic. I'm going to write that down as a little note. So I think this is where I'm going to land, guys. I'm going to land if I go Zinchenko to Perisic as an option, and then the options are like 2 8mm mids. I'm actually not huge on team structure as a thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. 2 8mm mids and Tony, or I get Bailey, or I get Bailey, Neto, and Haaland. So just to be clear on that, I can either get 2 8mm mids and Tony, or I can get Bailey, Neto, and Haaland. If you want to let me know what you think of that in the chat, that would be very interesting. Josh saying maybe Perisic to a 5 defender like Gabriel because he's guaranteed to start. I hear what you're saying, Josh. I did have Zinchenko in my original, but I feel like I really like Perisic, and I definitely am going to want him by game week 3, which is why I'm going to start with him. Let's have a look. Furam, can I upgrade I'll do some questions a bit for Furam, and I'm happy to answer it then. So I'm going to confirm transfers just to look at what it looks like. And then I've got that final dilemma that I need to figure out for myself. So let's say this week, for instance, I'd be looking at that as my starting 11. So, and I'd probably start Ward over Raya actually for that first fixture. I wonder if they rotate. I do need to have a look at that. Who rotates well with Leicester? Surely someone's done that on Twitter. If anyone knows in the chat who's done that on Twitter, then let me go. FPL Bailey. I always go with the Bailey option. Okay. I appreciate why you're saying that. So that's what I'd be looking at. I've got Neto as a very good first sub against Leeds. I've got Andreas Pereira at home to Liverpool. I really do think that looks good. I'm not wild about it. I'm basically making a lot of sacrifices to have the Haaland/Kane slot in my team. And there is also a risk that, let's say if Haaland bombs in the first 2, it's very, very possible that Kane goes crazy against Southampton. Haaland doesn't do anything against West Ham. In fact, I'd say that's the more likely scenario. Haaland drops in price, Kane rises in price. All of a sudden you're a bit stuffed. Yeah. I think, let's have a look. I think it's Brighton that rotate well with Ward. Interesting. I do like Sanchez as a 4.5 keeper. So we've got Brentford, Southampton. I'll come back to that. Thanks for telling me that, guys. And Bailey and James, I'll come back to that. But I will try and settle on this first dilemma. So that's option 1, right? Looks like that. So that 5 at the back, I'm nailed on that 5 at the back. I'm having that 5 at the back 100%. So there's that 5 at the back. And then there's those 2 are nailed, and he's nailed. Excuse the pun. And then we've got, it's sort of these 3 slots then that are left. Neto, Haaland, Bailey slots. So if I go from Haaland, I had 0.5 in the bank. I forgot about that. That's tasty. Haaland to Tony, or Wilson if I've got 0.5 in the bank. Haaland to Tony. Oh, it's that flipping... Losing Bailey just feels like he's such a gift, isn't he? Oh, I can't afford it. I miscalculated. So it would be looking at if I get Foden, it obviously does rule me out of Haaland game week 2. Just to see, I know I can't get 4 Man City players, but yeah, I can't do that. What about this? If I lost Diaz to... Hang on, let me get my train of thought here. If I lost Diaz to Trippier or Zinchenko or whatever, Can't afford it. The 4 million slot there. Can't afford that by 0.5. So I'm going to stick with Diaz, stick with that back five like I said. And then if I want that premium striker slot, I could go, let's just think out loud here. We're trying to think about all the possibilities we could do with our teams before the start of the season, don't we? Let's just be a bit different. Well, let's put another 8 in for now. I could go for that as a solid 4 in midfield, a solid 5 at the back, and then 1 up top. And then the problem with the 1 up top thing is, like, I'm not going to be at all happy with my final forward slot. So I don't think that's actually a realistic option, to be honest. If I did go for Mr. Tony, who I really like, then I'm looking at 7.5 for that final slot. I could go for like a Rashford, for instance, and that gives me $1 million in the bank. I don't mind having $1 million in the bank. Could look at, what about if I went, okay, here we go. Now we're thinking. What if I went Rashford to whoever that was, to Edison? All these players, I'm like, yeah, they're locked in, and then all of a sudden 10 seconds later they're not. Got a 6 million gap at the back there. Nah, I don't love it. I feel like Rashford and Martinelli are potential transfer issues. Foden we're not sure about. No, I can't force that slot up enough. Josh just said maybe Sancho. I think I'd rather start with Rashford than Sancho at this stage of the season. I feel like he's probably going to be playing striker. I think Sancho's had a great preseason, but I just feel like that edge of Rashford playing up front probably just edges it. But I think Sancho is a good pick. Yeah, he's on my watch list there. I'm going to go back to what I had before. I think I'm going to start with this. Gives me this I've got 0.5 in the bank, which I like. Oh, why is it saying rise 5.5? And Bailey's 8 million. He's had a price rise. Woo! I think that's some sort of bug. Let me go back to pick team. Oh yeah, it's not saved that, has it? So if I go for that to that, and then I click save team. Oh, I was going to go for him over him. Save team. And then I think this is what I'm starting with, guys. This is it. So transfers, let's sell. I mean, I trust you when you said the Raya. Let's just see what the rotation is. So basically Newcastle 2, Leeds 4. That's when Ward's got tricky games, I think. So we've got Brentford at home. Let me have a look. I'm just going to use the Fantasy Football Scout ticker. I don't know if you can see this or not, because I don't know how to stream properly. Ollie Paul told me off, who works for Hub, in a very friendly, lovely way, as Ollie is, for using that Scout fixture ticker. But I'm in no way affiliated with Fantasy Football Scout, but it's just old habits die hard. So let's have a look here. So in terms of fixture rotation, first 5, we'd be looking at Ward, Brentford, Southampton. I probably would say I wouldn't play him against Man United. But basically, game week 1, Ward against Brentford. Game week 2, Sanchez against Newcastle. I think Newcastle scored that game. Game week 3, Ward against Southampton. Game week 4, Sanchez against Leeds. These are all at home. Game week 5, I'd probably look at Sanchez away to Fulham over Ward against Man United. Now, obviously, the risk is that Ward doesn't start at all. And am I happy to play Sanchez? I think I am. So I think he's one of the best 4.5 keepers. I started with him last season. So I'm happy to make that change to Sanchez in. And I think that's me locked in, guys. I think I am locked in. So I've got Ward, and I've got and like I say, tomorrow I might just make a quick change of Ward to Everson if he doesn't play. Obviously, we wait on the press conferences. I've got a really good 5 at the back there, including double Liverpool, double City, which will give me the edge. I like doubling up on good teams like that. I actually think there's an argument to start Neto over Diaz, and I'm going to do it game week 1 because I think West Ham will score that game. They caused Man City trouble last year. I think Moyes is the type of manager who knows how to get at them. So I'm going to start with Diaz on the bench. But I've got Ward. I've got double Liverpool. This game week I have just Cancelo, but, you know, that's fine. I've got Perisic, who I like a lot. I've got Neto, Martinelli, Salah, Bailey, and I've got Jesus, and I've got Haaland. I think like that's a team I like. What I like about it is I can escape to other players. I've got 0.5 in the bank. I can escape to other players easily. If certain players perform, if certain players flop, then I can move. If there's like a pricing bandwagon, I've got a spare transfer game week 3, I can shift it that way. There probably is an argument to start with Kane over Haaland and hope that he goes wild against Southampton. That's the only thing that I'd probably need to think about in terms of if I'm saying this Haaland slot is a Kane slot as well. I do think there's a serious consideration to say start with Kane and book the transfer in pretty much. But there's challenges to do with that. Bailey, Brian no mugs. Yeah, I know. I rate Brian defence. They're good. Could see Man United Bailey getting a sniff. I actually could as well, viably. I remember that game. Was it 4-0 last season? Brighton smashed Man United, which was very satisfying to watch. This is at Old Trafford, though. It is Ten Hag's first game. I think he'll have them up for it, if nothing else. But on paper, I feel like Potter's a fantastic coach. He'll be knowing what to do. Last 4 out of 5 games, West Ham scored versus Man City. Yeah, that's it. That's why I'm not sure. I feel like Cancelo I'm happy to go with. And Diaz I want for that awesome run that he's got going ahead there. Sort of game weeks 2 to... Well, certainly 2, 4 and 5. I think Man City are a good bet. And that's where it's like... I am tempted to start with Kane, and just hope that he smash... I mean, I do support Southampton, so I want to say hope he smashed against Southampton from a fantasy perspective. And let's be honest, fantasy football is more important to me than real football, is the honest reality, guys. I'm not going to pretend it's not. I do hope Southampton win the game, but Kane scores a hat-trick, I won't be sad. So, I could go with that. The problem is Haaland, they could easily score one each, and then I've got booked in a transfer sort of wasted, but I'm playing catch-up then from the start. But you know what? What's the worst that's going to happen, right? One of these guys gets injured, and it happens. What I'm going to do quickly, let me just see something. So I just want to make sure you can see this if I do this. So I'm going to copy and paste my thing. And we're just going to go to fpl.team quickly. This is another sort of safety check I would suggest everyone does before the season starts. Just put your team ID in and have a little look and see how it looks for game weeks 2 and 3 and that. Hopefully you're following this. Let me just check. Yes, you are. Boom. What? Oh, it can't see my team. That's rubbish. I'll have to put it in. I think it's worth doing. What? Okay. What? Okay. Select club. So who do I have? Guys, what's going on here? What? Here's some good user testing live for you if you're watching this man who runs FPL team. Sanchez in... Whoa, man, this is going so slow. Does anyone know any other websites you can do this, where you can look at your... where you can... transfer. Okay, here we go. Is that going to work? I think that maybe their website's crashed. Anyone know any other websites where you can do this? Look, basically, I want to look at my... What about that one? livefpl.net. Let's have a look. I think this is a worthwhile exercise that everyone should do. I know I've said that a few times now, but look at that 6-figure rank. Boom. Love that. FF Scout Planner is good. James, you're cycling, mate. Be careful. Don't be tweeting while you're cycling. Do you have to pay for it? I'm not a member. Aidan Sweeney. Oh, this is also last season. Planning tools. Transfer planner? Look at all these web guys getting free user testing that they can watch live. Oh dear, guys. Someone get onto Ragabolly. Not working. Right, I'm just going to do it manual because screw it. What's going on? Right. So you're going to have to bear with me. But I'm just going to check. Basically, I don't really care about the fixtures of the best players, is the bottom line. So that doesn't matter to me at all. What I'm doing on my phone here is getting up the anonymous football website fixture ticker. Your company could be advertised here to my literally tens of watchers. So let's have a look. So I'm just going to go through quickly. So we've done the keepers. So I don't care about that. Again, Liverpool, they've got fantastic fixtures. I'd be happy to play them both in their difficult game against Man United. Just looking first 5 here. Man City, beyond Gameweek 1, happy to play them every week. Perisic, he's got Chelsea away Gameweek 2, which is a potential rest. I could potentially put him on the bench there. That makes me think that if I'm thinking I might book in the Kane to Haaland transfer, I could start with Haaland and not start with Perisic and see how he gets on the first 2 weeks and stick in someone else for a good first 2 game weeks. But who would I really put in for those first 2 game weeks alone? I mean, I could start with like a Trippier, who's got Forest and Brighton. Is a possibility, but I'm done now. I don't want to spend too long on this. Arsenal, I'm happy to play Martinelli every week. I'm happy to play Salah every week. Jesus, I'm happy to play every week. This Kane Haaland slot, I'm happy to play every week. So I've got 4-2-2 and DS. I've got 5-2-2 that I'm happy to play every week. That means all I'm really checking here is out of Bailey, Neto and Andreas Pereira, have I got a player I'm happy to play every week to begin with? Now, Bailey's got a tasty first 2 of Bournemouth away, Everton at home in 1 and 2. Great. He's got Crystal Palace away in 3 and West Ham at home in 4. He is the one player in my team, though, who I feel like could get dropped. So I do have to be aware of that. But I've got 0.5. I can turn him into a Gordon. I can turn him into an emerging 5.5 asset, no probs. Neto starts off with Leeds away. Then he's got Fulham at home game week 2. Could start him over Perisic, or maybe he'd be in my team anyway. And then he's got Tottenham away game week 3. I wouldn't want him there. But I've got Bailey, Crystal Palace away. Fulham play Brentford at home game week 3, so Andres Pereira could start. Basically, I'm happy looking at this. Neto has got 4 out of 5 games in the first 5 I'd be happy to start him in. He's got Leeds away, Fulham at home, Tottenham away, Newcastle at home, Bournemouth away. Bailey, if he starts, I've got Bournemouth away, Everton at home, Crystal Palace away, not so sure about. West Ham at home, not crazy about that either, but it's okay. And then who's the other one? Neto, I've just done him. Andreas Pereira, I do ideally want him as a sub, but I'd be okay playing him game week 3 if I needed to against Brentford at home. But to be honest, looking at this, maybe that's the one weakness. I'd probably be looking at playing this bunch. I'd probably be looking at playing Bailey away at Crystal Palace if he started well. I might be looking at Andreas Pereira at home to Brentford if he started well. I'd be reluctant about playing Neto away at Spurs. So that's a slight weakness in this team. I don't think it's the end of the world. I'm happy to sort of just see what happens there. And looking at game week 3 in general, I'm just sort of browsing the fixture list now, just seeing if there's any standout options. It's not a fantastic week for fixtures in general. I feel like it's a week where Tottenham play Wolves at home and West Ham play Brighton at home. That's not going to be loads of goals in those games. I think looking at this, it could be a low-scoring week. Leicester at home to Southampton is an option. Everton are at home to Nottingham Forest. Someone could do well there. There's not many games there where I feel like some of the middling teams, like Man United, no offence Man United fans, they play at Liverpool. Spurs will be low against Wolves. The fixture list for game 3 doesn't look great, and in those circumstances I'm happy to sort of ride it a little bit and just see what happens with my 11th player. It's only the 11th player. If they get 2, whatever. I missed someone. I put my bike away, says James. What about checking keeper fixtures rotation? Well, you might have missed me talking about keeper rotations. Basically, everyone said Sanchez rotates well with a Ward, and I believed them, and I checked it, and he does. And looking at this, I'm just looking at basically the tricky fixtures as I look ahead is 2 and 4 for Ward when he has Arsenal and Chelsea away. And the only teams that, like Arsenal, have got good fixtures there. They've got Leicester and Fulham at home. But again, am I really going to want to drop Ramsdale for Ward? Probably not. I'm not really interested in a rotation if I'm going there. Villa, I've got 2 good fixtures in those game weeks, but again, he's a more expensive option. I prefer Ramsdale. Do you know what? Brentford isn't a bad rotation, is it? They've got Man United at home and Everton at home. And in game week 5, they've got Crystal Palace away. When I think I probably do prefer Sanchez there. Anyone else with good fixtures in 2 and 4? Liverpool, that ain't going to happen. Man City, that is not going to happen as a rotation option. We don't know who's starting for Southampton. Wolves have got Fulham at home and Newcastle at home, but again, more expensive keeper. So I'm going to say, James, on that basis, that I think I'm going to concur. I think Sanchez and Raya are both good rotation options, but I would have my first 5 fixtures will be Ward, Brentford home, Sanchez, Newcastle home, Ward, Southampton home, Sanchez, Leeds home, and then Sanchez, Fulham away in 5. And I'm locked in. That's my little stress testing of my team done. I don't really care about ownership, but I suspect got some high-owned assets. It's just Kane versus Haaland. That's the only one that I'm probably going to sleep on. And I think I'm going to start with Kane because I feel like he's... He is more likely to do well than Haaland in the first week, but it's that thing of like, is he going to do 4 points better than Haaland? If he's going to do 4 points or more better, I think it's worth it. If I think he's not going to score 4 points more, I'd probably just start with Haaland. But Kane could easily score a hat-trick against Southampton. I don't see that happening for Haaland. So I'm initially going to start with Kane. I will sleep on it. We'll wait for news on Ward. But other than that, unless we get news from the presses that players aren't starting or at risk of not starting, that is going to be my team. So that is my FPL starting team for 22-23. If you guys have got any questions, chuck them in the chat and I will do it now. I'm just going to put a quick tweet out saying, what happens if I click on this tab? I'm just going to see whether you can see what I'm doing in this tab. I don't think you... Oh, you can! You can see what happens when I go to that tab. Right, you're going to go to my Twitter feed now, guys, and get to see what's on my Twitter feed. What comes up first? Which Twitter user comes up first? You can go and rush and tell them all. Oh my days, 2 notifications. My notifications are off the charts today. It's at James Stevenson _ and then Bira Moretti. That was a bit underwhelming. I'm going to put a little update on my stream thing. Whoa, look at that. What a profile. Update 1923. You can read it obviously, but I'm just in the habit of talking out loud now. Happy to answer questions for anyone. For your game week 1 drafts anytime. Hang on a second. Happy to answer Happy to answer any questions for you / your game week 1 drafts anytime from now. We'll be doing it for the next 15 minutes. A little spoiler for you guys there. Oh, and I'll re-click that. Get your questions in now if you got them, guys. Or shove your draft in there as well. I'll try and make it interesting for everyone. So, happy to do Sky questions too. FPL or Sky questions. On YouTube. While we're here, YouTube, that word reminds me, do give the stream a like. Do subscribe. You don't have to click the bell, but you can if you want. So one thing I'm going to answer was, from earlier in the week, I put a thing about, my friend got screwed by Qatar Airways. If you want to retweet that, you're very welcome to. I think they've got a refund, but basically got totally screwed by Qatar Airways. So, be careful booking Qatar Airways. They'd updated the name on the ticket correctly when they got to the airport. Qatar Airways, even though they checked on the phone beforehand the day before, said they couldn't fly. Screwed. Anyway, there was a question here in my advanced question. My tweets, honestly, they rock. I got 7 likes on this one. Boom. I have one question. Neto, James Alapran, my good friend. I've got him. I'm not excited about him, to be honest, but I think for 5.5, we can lower our expectations. I've got, in my FPL team, I've got basically, I feel like I've got, including Diaz there, I think I've got 10 killer players who I think would do really well, and I've got 1 slot for these junky midfielders, Neto, Bailey and Andreas, who are total punts and could do well or could not. I think, mate, if is a price slot that needs, I would go for it. This is the one from FPL Scar. It's not a particularly specific question, sorry, cry face, but I'd be interested to know your rationale for which formation you eventually settle on. Well, as you can see, guys, I wasn't particularly wedded to any formation, and really with Archer as my only non-playing player, I could actually in any given week play pretty much any formation apart from 3 up top. My personal thing that I like to go for is to just pick whatever players you think are going to score the most points. I'm not that interested in team structure. If I was, I would definitely have an 8 million mid. Obviously, I have considered this 11.5 slot in here, but for me, like, formation comes second. I think if you're starting with formation and then picking players after it, I feel like that's a suboptimal way to play the game. Pick the players you think are going to score the most points, where you think there's the most value. Just let the formation worry about itself. That's my personal take on it. Right, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to start answering some questions in the chat. Now, there was a couple of further up, so I'm going to come back to those because I think that's only fair. Josh Topley said, I really like the draft I have at the moment. I've got triple City, Arsenal and Liverpool, which concerns me. What do you think? Would it be better to include more players from different teams? No, I don't think so. I think those teams are all awesome. City and Liverpool, definitely, I think almost you should triple up on and try and triple up on them. Arsenal, you could say you could go for 2, but I just think if you've got Jesus, Martinelli, Saka, Zinchenko, Gabriel, all of those are great fantasy options. Just because you've got 3 of them, it doesn't stop them being great fantasy options. They're all brilliant picks. So as long as in your mind you're happy to do that thing of like, you're not managing your risk. You're basically saying, I could do really, really well here. You could crash and burn, but I think equally if Arsenal smash it in that first run of games, which they easily could, you're going to be flying up ahead. So I think the way you want to get ahead in FPL, and when I've had my top 1k seasons, you go all in on teams you think are going to do well. Triple defence, triple attack, back those teams to succeed. For me, that's the most fun way to play FPL. My phone is buzzing, man. Oh, my wife's sending me a shopping list. I'll read it to you in a minute because that's the sort of cool thing we do on stream. But yeah, go all in on the teams you think are going to do well. And I enjoy playing that way because that's the way you finish really high. I don't think it's not necessarily the way you're going to get like a guaranteed top 10 or 20k finish, but I feel like do it. So Josh, I think stick with that. Forum answered that one. Forum, can I upgrade my 8 million mid to Sterling and down Robbo to a 5 million? Well, honestly, I know it's not a helpful answer. Totally up to you. You just don't know how they're going to do. I personally think that Andrew Robertson, he's in my team. I think he's great value at 7 million. I just don't see really why you'd necessarily want to do that. Like, I suppose you're looking at Sterling or Trippier, for instance, versus, let's say, Diaz and Sterling and Trippier versus Diaz. Oh, you can't do Diaz and Robbo, but whatever. Let's say Mount and Robbo. I prefer the 8 million and Robbo, but you can do whatever you like, and Sterling could do really well. But go with what you think, mate. Oh, there's no questions. Apart from James said, I don't like picking players solely because of price unless they're base price. That's what's happening with Neto, I feel. Yeah, I think you're right, mate. I think the thing for me is I've basically picked 10 players that I think are going to smash it. Well, actually, the goalkeeper, who cares? 9 players, outfield players, who are going to smash it. Goalkeeper, you sort of think, oh, they should do fine. And then that 11th, the 10th outfield slot, the 11th player slot is just... It's just an extra. And to be honest, I'm happy with Neto and Bailey as options. You'd think that out of Neto and Bailey, one of them is going to probably start quite well. And then I can jump to them as my 11th player and bench the other one or transfer them out. Probably, if I had to guess what my first transfers are going to be, if I start with Kane, it'll be Kane to Haaland. If I don't start with... But then again, if you look at Spurs fixtures, it's basically like a 1-week loan, isn't it? Like Kane to Haaland. I suppose Wolves at home, Nottingham Forest away. What have they got? 3 and 4. Newcastle away, Palace at home, Forest at home. I mean, yeah, if I move to Haaland there, is just I probably would stick with Haaland then for that little run. Oh man, I'm doubting myself now. I'm sort of thinking, well, what happens if I went with Haaland and Kane and downgraded Salah? Oh, this is why you've got to be careful locking stuff in, isn't it? Pinion 111111111. Do you not like Walker at all? Only 5 million and no Cucurella transfer means he should get a good running team. I think he's a decent pick. I just feel like I want to leave that. I think like I'd rather spend the extra million on Diaz. I think Walker will play probably like 25, 30 games this season. For that Man City slot, I don't want value, I want the best picks. And that's the same for Liverpool. I'm not looking for value, I'm looking for the best picks. Like, I do think you obviously do value as a factor, but primarily I want points. Like, if I've got 3 City players, the 3 best City players, they're going to churn points. The 3 best Liverpool players are going to churn points. If you pick the 3 best players from Liverpool and the 3 best players from Man City in terms of points returns, you're going to have a good FPL season. That's just the way it is. So I've only got 2 Man City, let's be clear, but let's pretend this is Haaland. I've got Cancelo and Diaz, who I think are value, but I think they'll churn points and they'll be among the top scorers for Man City. I've also got 2 great defenders who are value, but who I think will churn points and be among Liverpool's top point scorers. And Salah is the reason I've gone Salah is obviously Salah may not be as valuable as Diaz, but he's going to be my pretty much perma cap, and I think he's going to get the points. So that's where I'm at with that. So I think he's a viable pick. I don't think he's a bad one, but I personally think I'm not sure I go there. I've also had a few people say they wouldn't be surprised if Ake started left back first game with Cancelo right back to give extra height against a very physical West Ham team. I don't expect that, but it's possible. James says you should downgrade Jesus. I don't think I'm going to. I think he's a good pick at 8 million. He's in. He's nailed. And James Uganda says when you consider Salah, you've been on too long. Yes, probably. But let's just have a little look, shall we? And just see what happens if I do go there. If I, for instance, this is where, if I went for Haaland and Kane, I went for them both. This is where you're never locked in, are you, until the deadline comes. Ooh, this is a little bit interesting. Let's say I went for Haaland and Rashford. Now, I'm going to make the move, but I'm almost certainly going to go back. But look at that. Salah and Archer to Rashford and Haaland. I mean, you can't say that that Haaland's not an explosive player. I obviously wouldn't captain him there. But I'd be looking at starting with Diaz, second sub. That is depth. Now, the reason I like this a little bit is because it means that I could bench boost if I wanted to before I wildcard. I'm not going to let that be a decisive factor because we often screw up our teams for the chips. But I could do that. The strength is it gives me 2 good Liverpool options. But, a Liverpool space. I've got a good, solid... Diaz would be my sort of regular over Bailey, basically. That would be sort of basically the strongest 11 right there. Have I got anything in the bank? That would be the strongest 11, and I've got 2 excellent subs and Andreas Pereira. Now I don't hate it. I don't hate it. But I feel like if I'm going without Salah, I would want to go for Diaz. And at that point, it's like, right, where do I find the money for Diaz? So it'd be looking at Perisic to a 4.0 to get Rashford to Diaz. And then it becomes, right, so Perisic becomes a non-playing sub, or like a Nico Williams who I don't really want to play. And Rashford becomes Diaz. So then Neto or Bailey have to play every week, which I have got, admittedly, in my existing team. What's the difference there then? So it's basically Diaz and Haaland. Okay, so it's Williams, Diaz and Haaland against what? Yeah, Williams, Diaz and Haaland against Archer, Salah and Perisic. So in terms of starters, it's Salah. This is where my brain gets fried. I mean, the thing is, Salah's got an awesome fixture game week 1, hasn't he? He's got a slightly stickier one in game week 3 potentially, but I want Salah for Bournemouth at home. I want him for Crystal Palace at home. I want him for Fulham away. I'm not starting without Salah. I'm sure others will. James, you're going to benching. I feel like I've got a slight benching headache, but I like benching headaches. I think they're a good thing. Go for Cameron Archer. I think the consensus is Cameron Archer's the best 4.5, isn't he? He's going to get some minutes, possibly. I do think Greenwood might be a little bit overlooked. But yeah, this is where I'm starting. That is what I've settled on, I think. It's just Kane versus Haaland for that final slot and the merits of booking in a transfer, because that is, I think, what I'm doing by doing this. But I mean, short of someone getting injured, I suppose what I'm saying is I'm happy to carry someone getting injured through to game week 3. I'm losing a bit of flexibility by not doing it. But I do think that Southampton will potentially crumble against Spurs, and I think Spurs will do well. So, do I want to do that? That's the one I'll sleep on. What shall I start with as my placeholder? Any final questions, by the way, feel free to chuck them in the chat. Otherwise, I will log off very shortly. I'm just deciding between Kane and Haaland. I think I'm going to start with Haaland. Yeah, I'm going to, unless I change my mind overnight, which I absolutely reserve the right to, I'm going to start with Haaland over Kane and not book the transfer in, and give myself the flexibility that in game week 3 this gives me the flexibility to look at like bringing Spurs players for game week 3. But again, who's it going to be realistically? If I'm talking about like this theory of bringing in Spurs players, I've got to be honest about what the possibilities of actually bringing a Spurs player in. And actually, it's like, well, I would have to sell Haaland. Am I realistically going to sell Haaland before he plays Newcastle, Palace, Forest? No, I'm not, unless he's really flopped. Kane, he's got Wolves, Forest, West Ham in that run. I think Haaland's run is particularly decent. For that game week 3 to 5, I prefer Haaland's run, I think. So I think it's really if I go for Kane or not. Evening, Andy Martin. Good to see you, mate. How you doing? And Perry Hart, good to see you in the chat as well, Perry. Hope you're doing well, mate. Good luck on Sky top spot this year. Yeah, me and Perry were battling out for top spot in Sky for a long time. So, yeah, it's good to see you, mate. I hope you do well in Sky again. Where you can come second this year, Perry, and I'll win it. Andy Martin, I'm interested to know your thoughts, or anyone's thoughts really, on this Kane versus Haaland dilemma. If you've only just tuned in, basically, the question I've got is, I've got this 11.5 million slot. This is what I'm starting with. I'll show you. Hold on a second. Let me show you. So this is what I'm starting with. Is I've got Kane here in this slot. It's the only one really that I think is up for grabs. And if I go for Kane to begin with, the thought is that I would then transfer him to Haaland in game week 2. But that's a transfer booked in, so I get Haaland for Bournemouth. Because I think Kane's got much more chance of exploding against Southampton than I think Haaland does against West Ham. But then I also get the flexibility of having Haaland. So that's the one that I'm really unsure about. So Pinion is saying it's 5 at the back and no-go in Sky because of flexibility. I have got 5 in the back, I think, on both my Sky drafts, Pinion, so I think go for it. If you think the player's going to score the most points, go for it. Last season, when I came second, I had 5 at the back all the time. I think just go for it. Well, I know Reece James. Well, Chelsea being a bit dodgy pre-season, I'm still not convinced. I think James may well start the season at centre-back, at least a 50% chance. They've looked dodgy. They've not got great home fixtures. I'm just steering clear of him. He's obviously a great pick, so go for him if you think he's good. James is saying, I get City against Bournemouth is scary, but their points get spread out. But that's historical. I feel like that's definitely true in the past. But I feel like there's a decent chance that actually a lot more points are going to be funneled through Haaland this season, I think, is the likelihood. So I think he is an outstanding option. James, Son to Salah instead of Kane. Yes, I could go Salah out, Son in game week 3 to get my Spurs player in. Perry saying Kane versus Haaland X Mins. Yeah, I wasn't high on Haaland to begin with because of that reason. Felt like Haaland's minutes might be managed, but actually he started the Charity Shield, Community Shield. I feel like they're gonna go for it hard early. David Naylor, hi David, said, guess you'd have to keep an eye on price rise if Haaland bangs versus West Ham and move early. Yeah, so actually, David, I don't know if you're here earlier, but that was the thing that made me initially think Kane, because I thought it's more likely that Kane would go off game week 1. And if Kane goes off game week 1 and Haaland doesn't, or just does okay, then what will happen is Haaland, I think Kane's price will go up, Haaland's price will slide. I think that is a factor. Although I've got 0.5 in the bank with my draft, I do think I don't want to be sitting on a player who's dropping. Like, say if Haaland goes down to 11.4, Kane goes up to 11.6, that's a 0.2 loss straight off the bat. I don't really want to do that. So that does edge me towards Kane. Thanks, David, for that comment. And here we go. Andy Martin with the answer. Found Kane versus Haaland really tough. Ultimately, I chose Kane as he has the better Game Week 1 fixture and more reliable mins. Yeah. I don't think Chelsea's even that difficult Game Week 2 for him. I'm not... Yeah. I was going to say I'm not sure about the final part. I don't think Chelsea's that difficult Game Week 2. You start with Salah, by the way, Andy. But I think it would be booking in transfer almost certainly if I do it. But I actually think that David's comment before this makes me think Kane's safety of minutes, plus that's a small factor, but especially the possibility of a price swing makes me think I think I'm going to start with Kane. Yeah. Sky question from James. Wing backs or centre backs in Sky? So Perisic versus Diarra. Centre backs in Sky. You want players who are going to play the minutes to rack up tackles and passes. So yeah, I would say generally centre backs are much better. Again, in my team, I don't want to share my whole team, but I've basically gone for centre backs nearly entirely for my Sky picks. Dave, makes sense. Suppose if you're playing early wildcard, it lets you play aggressively. Yeah, I am keen to avoid the early wildcard, so it would slightly push me towards Haaland instead of booking transfers. But at the end of the day, that wildcard's there as a safety net. Let's try and chase points. I'm going to go for Haaland. I'm going to go for Kane. I'm going to make him my vice captain, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be me locked in. So I've just seen Andy's comment. So that's me locked in. That's it. I'm going to log off in a couple of minutes, but I've just seen Andy say, no Salah, no problem. Also, no Jesus and no Haaland. Nice, Andy. I like it. I love people who play the game the way you do, mate. And I love you, obviously. Do you know what? I actually feel like there's so many ways to skin the cat in FPL. And I think, let's see what my team would look like if I went without that. So obviously my team I'm really happy with. It's the best team that you can possibly make, so we have to factor that in. But if I get rid of Salah and Jesus, I could go, for instance, very happily for Luis Diaz. I could go for Ivan Toney, who I've already said I think is a great pick. And I could upgrade, how much does that give me? 6.5. What's Son? Is he 12? I'd probably look at upgrading Neto to Son, and I'd downgrade, let's say Perisic, why not? Because not everyone else likes Perisic as much as I do. Go for Perisic to Trippier. Let's have a look. So I'm losing Perisic, Salah, Neto and Jesus, Trippier, Diaz, Son, Toney. I mean, when you look at that left list to the right list, Andy, I feel like there's not much in that. I like the punt. I love the way you play the game. I do think Jesus is one at 8 million that feels like a little bit too good to turn down. He's the one where I feel like, actually, if you said, I'll make that Jesus and I'll make that Nico Williams. I don't know what your team is, mate, by the way, so I'm only just riffing on my own here, but I wouldn't pick Vestergaard. But, let's say he's a 4.0. I got more in the bank as well. Could make that into like a dunk or something. Let's say we're going to make that into random, any 4.5 as a sub option. You'd have 4 great defenders, you'd have 1, 2, 3 great attackers, you'd have 2 good strikers, and you'd have to choose between Bailey and your 4.5. I prefer my team, but I feel like there's lots of different ways to play it, and I'm sure you've put more than 1 minute into thinking about it. I want you to be right, Andy. Actually, I agree with you, James, in terms of it would be great if Salah flopped, even though I've got him. It would be great. Yeah. I've covered Jesus for Martinelli and Saka. I'm not a huge believer in coverage, but I do get what you're saying. In terms of if Arsenal go off and Jesus scores a hat-trick, you think Martinelli and Saka are gonna do it. I'm not a massive believer in attacking coverage. I feel like, yeah, but I get you, and I feel like, but for 8 million Saka, would you not rather have 8 million Jesus? That's the only question for me. I feel like I would rather, if you think he's going to score more, that's fair, but I feel like, yeah, Jesus. Do you know what? Having this chat makes me think we should get you on stream sometime. But let's do that sometime. Maybe post one game week we could have a chat. David, looking at Kane's first chunk of fixtures, it's maybe Spurs' best run of the season. So guess early on could be the time to capitalise, especially before the Champions League. Yeah, it could be. Someone suggested about, I mean, I could, for instance, if I really want to go fruity, I could do something like, this is all theory, never works out this way, but I could go Kane to Haaland game week 2, then Salah to Son game week 3, or look at some other options around that. It would be great if Jesus Blank's first game week, his price would crumble. Do you know what? I don't fancy him massively against Crystal Palace, to be fair. I don't. I feel like that's a difficult game. Out of all of that early run, I would say even Man United away, I'd say that's his hardest fixture until game week 9. So it's definitely possible it crumbles, but I have every intention of holding him through that run, and I think his price will recover, so I'm okay with that. But if you're off him, nice to jump on him, innit? So, yeah, do you know what? Again, thinking, I don't want to go too much around cash, and I do need to log off in a minute. But, you know, if I did to say, for instance, get rid of those two, went for someone as a 1 week punt, nah, I'm not going to do that. But let's see if I did. I could go for like what's Leicester got? Brentford at home. Pick someone who you think is going to explode, just game week 1 only. Do you know what? I'm irresistibly close to Kane and Haaland. Oh my goodness. If I lose Jesus though. Then I've got Kane and Haaland. That would be a 4.5. That would be a 4. I'd have 4. Yeah, too weak. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to play about with it. But yeah, there's a viable strategy there to go without Jesus, let his price potentially crumble, and then pick him up for 7.9, 7.8. I think that's definitely valid. Right. I'm definitely... James, you're definitely Saka's better than Jesus. Wow. Interesting. I don't fancy that personally, but fair enough if you do. I can see why you would be. Got Wilson. I like Wilson a lot. And 0.5 in the bank. Don't like Sancho or under 7.5. Exactly. And you can always change. That's the thing. Like, you can always change. Right. Final questions. Tom Takahashi says Diaz and Pope or Cancelo and Raya. I think Cancelo's too good not to have. I would say Cancelo and Raya for me. James, if Jesus was 9 million, he'd have half the ownership. Yeah, it's possible, but 1 million's quite a lot at this stage of the season. Yeah, Perry Hart, still Cap versus Palace tomorrow night. At the moment, I haven't finished my Sky drafts. I'll do that later, but I haven't got him in either of my Sky teams. So obviously I don't fancy him that much, but I think I will probably look at bringing him in to at least one of my Sky teams just for coverage, really. Having said I don't believe in coverage. In Sky, I believe in it a bit more. Andy Martin, exactly. I'm buying Jesus game week 3. So what are you missing from game week 2? Palace away, Leicester at home. I mean, I think that's could be a 5-goal fixture there for Arsenal. But yeah, fair enough. You've got Saka and Martinelli, so if they score 5 goals, you should do okay. Maybe I do believe in coverage. David Naylor, I'm on Haaland for potential City explosion for Bournemouth and could captain an Arsenal asset versus Bournemouth. I'm on Haaland for potential City explosion versus Bournemouth and could captain Arsenal versus Bournemouth in game week 3 when Kane has Wolves. Yeah, I think that's good. I like that. I'd actually thought about initially when I didn't have this other 11.5 slot in my team from my very first draft from the first stream. I was looking at Jesus captain game week 3, and that's when he came into my side. So yeah, is Raya the best 4.5 goalkeeper? Says Tom. I like Raya standalone. I would have said Raya, but Sanchez rotates a bit better with Ward, and so I think it's worth that little rotation if we're confident that Ward's going to start. And again, if we're not confident Ward's going to start, Raya does still rotate okay with Ward, and I might go back to Raya, but I think Raya or Sanchez for me. Hey, hi from BC Canada, Dave, watching with interest. Hello, Andy. I'm presuming it's Andy, not Lisa. Andy is one of my main mini league rivals. He won, so like this, where jumpers for goalposts. That's one of the mini leagues that I'm in. That's the mini league I want to win, basically, with friends. And Andy won it last season, and we have been rivals for many seasons. So, Andy, I'm playing open-handed. If you want to WhatsApp me your team, you're very welcome. And then I won't make any changes, I promise. But yeah. And good luck with Alex as well, picking his team for the smalls. Blake's done his team. Right, I'm going to log off in 1 minute. I'll quickly share my son's team because I said I'd do that because he's 7 years old and I feel like he's got a better team than about 3/4 of the people on Twitter, to be honest. So let's have a look. So this is my son's team, 7-year-old, did it by himself. Slightly questionable keepers. He's got De Gea and Lloris in goal, so I will be advising him to downgrade one of those. But he's got, as a defence, he's got Alexander-Arnold, he's got Nico Williams as a bench option, but he's got Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Perisic and Koulibaly as his 4. And then in midfield, he's got Salah, Bailey. I don't know how he's got that one. Salah, Bailey, Gordon, and that would be 3. He's got Andreas Pereira and Declan Rice as his bench options, and then he's got Darwin Núñez, Haaland, and Johnson as his Brennan Johnson as his 3 forwards. 7 years old, that's pretty decent. So yeah, I didn't share my shopping list, but there's garlic on it. Tom, final question. Why is everyone rotating goalkeepers? It's because Ward at 4.0 has become an option because Leicester have sold Schmeichel. So Ward or Everton are going to start for Leicester, and that's a gift. So you don't have to play them. You don't have to rotate them. But because you've got a 4.0 option, you may, if you think Raya or Sanchez are going to outscore them every week, or whichever goalkeeper you got is going to outscore them every week, just put that player in. But I think actually Ward against Brentford at home is going to outscore Sanchez at Man United away, or Raya, Leicester away. So that's why people are rotating. Anyway, I'm done. My team is locked in, bar any late news. This is what I'm going with. Usually it'll be DS in the team. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for all the comments in the chat. Remember, FPL is meant to be fun, so don't get too frustrated if you flop in Game Week 1. There's a few seasons ago, just to reassure you, this is probably about 5 or 6 seasons ago, I had like a terrible start to the season, and Game Week 1, I had Thibaut Courtois. He got sent off. I had a disaster game. I got about 22 points, I think. I bought in Adrian for Game Week 2 for Courtois. He got sent off in Game Week 2, so I had 2 keepers sent off in a row, Game Week 1 and 2. I got even less points that second week, 21 or 20. It was a disaster. I did sort of slowly recover my season, but it's that thing of like, this is going to happen in fantasy, right? You know, you're going to have good weeks and bad weeks. So no matter what happens, try and remember, we're playing this for fun. Keep your chin up, and I hope everyone has fantastic Game Week 1s that are just marginally less fantastic than mine. And yeah, Perry Hart saying good luck in all formats. Yeah, good luck in all formats, everyone. Sky, FPL, if you're playing Fan Team, Dream Team, TFF, whichever you're playing, good luck. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good evening, and I will see you all very soon. This always happens at the end of a stream. I'm like, and I'll see you all soon, and then I've got to work out how to close the stream down. There it is. Right. Good luck, and I'll see you soon. Go to stop streaming, end stream, end. Good luck, and see you soon.